Okay, so today I'm going to talk about why the Resident Evil movies suck. You know, the whole trilogy. Not the video games, the movies. Now, Resident Evil and Resident Evil Apocalypse, as movies, they're okay. They're decent. They're nothing great, but they're not too bad. You know, they're decent movies. But as Resident Evil movies, no, they suck. They totally messed up the Resident Evil name. Now, okay, to be fair, I have not seen Resident Evil Part 3, you know, Extinction, mostly because it's not worth my money to go see in the theaters. But I haven't heard very good things about it. Okay, so here's what I have a problem with the Resident Evil movies. They basically just took the Resident Evil title and slapped it on their movie. Kind of like what they did with the Final Fantasy movie that had nothing to do with Final Fantasy. Yeah, what's up with that? So, they basically take the name and the gist of the story, you know, with the T-Virus and the G-Virus and, you know, Raccoon City and whatnot. Part 1, it takes place in the mansion, I guess, so they got that part right. But it had none of the Resident Evil characters. See, Resident Evil is known for being a gory game. It's a zombie game, you know. In the movie Resident Evil, they're dead, so no blood, right? Yeah, cut out all the blood. Every other zombie movie has blood, but let's make the Resident Evil game, known for its gore, not have blood. Yeah. Okay. Anyways, and the main bad creature in the movie is the Licker. Please, let alone that wasn't until part 2 of the game, but it wasn't even the main creature. It was the side creature. It was one of the easy creatures. Plus, the best part of Resident Evil was the laser scene, and that's when you know you messed up somewhere. When the best part of a zombie movie has nothing to do with zombies. Yeah, the majority of that movie wasn't even zombies. But it's a zombie freaking movie about a zombie freaking game. Resident Evil. Okay. And then we move on to Resident Evil Part 2, Apocalypse. Okay, so they have Jill Valentine, you know, and a pathetic attempt at portraying Carlos. And then the Nemesis, but they totally screwed on that. And come on, the bad guys were controlling him. He's not a robot. And what's up with the Fifth Element girl? You know, she came out of nowhere. She's like the main character of all 3 movies, but she has, like, nothing to do with Resident Evil. In the game, she's just a made-up character. And what's with her Neo powers? You know, what's up with that? You know, fighting the Nemesis? Come on. You can't fight the Nemesis hand-to-hand combat, and then the Nemesis has feelings and stops and goes against the bad guys. What the fuck is going on? Part at the end of Apocalypse where the helicopter was shooting at the Fifth Element girl, and then, you know, she's running along the building and the glass is breaking and she jumps and those guys are in front of her and then she has a gun and she drops it, but she jumps down and picks it up and starts shooting them. That's a total ripoff of Code Veronica, which can't say ripoff because it is Resident Evil, but the movies, all they did was steal some of the cool parts from the games. I don't want to see some Fifth Element girl with stories that are just basically the basics with the virus and the outbreak in the city. I want to see Chris Redfield, Jill Valentine, Wesker, Barry, the Tyrant, Part 1. Part 2, move on to Leon S. Kennedy, Claire Redfield, Ada, and William Birkin. You know, and so on and so on. I want to see the actual storyline. Because Hollywood cannot come up with a good storyline. Now, okay, I understand that there are a lot of Resident Evil games. Let alone there's a lot of Resident Evil games overall. But just deal with the main story. Even so, there's a lot of Resident Evil games dealing with the main story. Okay, so here, I got an idea for you, Hollywood. Combine Resident Evil 1 with Resident Evil 0. Since they're basically near the same time. Combine them. Or, if it's too long, go Grindhouse on their ass, you know? Have a double feature. Just release as Part 1, though. Then, from Part 2, combine the video games Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. Because they're basically in the same couple of days. There you go. Make it a whole movie or make it two movies. There you go. There's your Resident Evil 1 and Resident Evil 2. Then from there, make Code Veronica Part 3, make Resident Evil 4 Part 4, and so on and so on, Resident Evil 5. It's very simple, but no, they had to go screw it up with Neo Super Fifth Element Girl, you know, the Nemesis having feelings, you know, they just had to screw it up so much. You know, that's why I hate the Resident Evil movies, and that's why they suck. And Resident Evil Extinction is so far off of the Resident Evil path. What, in the desert, the end of the world? Come on, Land of the Dead, anyone? That's fucking bullshit. You know, there's a lot of video games that I'd like to see turn into movies, you know. There's so many good video games that would make good movies. But Hollywood would just screw them all up. So they might as well just leave them alone and let them live in their own legend, you know. Don't try to make a movie out of them unless you can do it right. Which you can't, so leave it alone. Thank you and good night.